Welcome to Twisted Truths, where betrayal meets brutal payback, and where the most unexpected twists expose what people are really capable of. This story isn't just shocking, it's personal. My name is Ethan Voss. I'm 32 years old and a self-made photographer based out of Asheville, North Carolina. I don't come from money, I don't wear designer shoes, and I sure as hell don't have a golf membership at some mountain resort. What I do have are these hands, a camera, and a relentless drive that got me from shooting local weddings to capturing wild bison for National Geographic. But none of that mattered to Diane and Gerald Whitmore, my wife's parents. To them, my entire life was a failed resume. Every Sunday dinner at their pristine colonial home in Biltmore Forest felt like stepping onto a landmine. Gerald would sip from his scotch and throw backhanded comments like, "So how's the shutter-clicking hobby going?" While Diane offered me dessert and disapproval in equal measure. She always served me last. Their daughter, Morgan, was the only reason I stayed quiet. She believed in me when no one else did. We met 6 years ago at a small gallery opening where my landscape series was on display. She was finishing her master's in environmental science. Passionate, brilliant, and somehow, miraculously, she saw something in me I hadn't even seen in myself yet. But her parents? They never let her forget the men she could have had. The lawyer. The neurosurgeon. The real estate heir. Last Christmas I overheard Diane on the phone. Morgan could have married Richard, remember him? But no, she chose the one with a camera. She said camera, like it was a contagious disease. Still I bit my tongue. For Morgan. Because she loved them despite everything and I didn't want to make her choose. Until Diane tried to poison me. It was Diane's birthday the night it happened. I had just gotten back from Montana where I'd been knee-deep in snow, tracking wolves for a magazine shoot. My body ached. My skin stung from windburn. But Morgan insisted we go. "Just 2 hours," she pleaded. "It's her birthday." We arrived to the usual staged perfection. White candles, classical music, expensive wine. Gerald launched into a monologue about a merger he was closing, while Diane fluttered around, smug in her birthday pearls. And then she brought out her famous sangria. I offered to help carry the glasses to the table. That's when I saw it. 2 separate glasses not part of the matching set. Diane flinched when I stepped into the kitchen. "Oh, Ethan, I've got it," she said too fast. She was holding a small vial. Colorless. Odorless. She just finished pouring something into one of the glasses. "This one's special, for my favorite son-in-law," she said with a smile that never reached her eyes. My blood went cold. I took both glasses. Walked calmly back to the dining room. Set the one with the film floating on top in front of Gerald. Watched him sip it as I poured myself water. 45 minutes later, Gerald clutched his stomach and staggered to the bathroom. He didn't make it. The hallway rang with retching sounds. Diane paled. Our eyes locked across the table. And in that instant, I knew. She'd meant to drug me. And I just served her husband the poison she intended for me. I didn't say a word. I didn't flinch. I pocketed the glass and helped clear the table as Morgan rushed to check on her dad. Diane stammered something about bad oysters. I just nodded, kissed Morgan on the cheek and said, "Let's go home." That night, I placed the glass in a Ziploc bag and didn't sleep. I wasn't angry. I was done. Not just with their arrogance. Not just with their contempt. I was done pretending this wasn't war. I didn't tell Morgan that night. I wanted to. God, I wanted to. But how do you tell the woman you love that her mother tried to drug you at the family dinner table? You don't. Not without proof. First thing Monday morning, I called Jason Lynn, a former client and biochemist who ran a toxicology lab just outside of town. He owed me a favor. I'd photographed his research team pro bono after his sister's wedding. "Personal or professional?" he asked when I dropped off the glass in a padded case. "Family," I said. He didn't ask more. 3 days later my phone buzzed. "There's benzodiazepine in that glass," Jason said flatly. "Not enough to kill you but enough to sedate someone. Cause confusion. Blackouts. You sure this is from a family dinner?" I asked him to send over the report. Told him I'd never mention his name. Then I hung up and sat in my studio for over an hour just staring at the wall. I was right. She really tried to drug me. But why? I thought about Diane's perfectly plucked eyebrows, the way she hovered near Morgan like a protective spider, spinning guilt into every word. I remembered her tone that night, how she said special sangria, like she was gifting me something precious. This wasn't a mistake. It wasn't a joke. It was a power move. She wanted me out of the way. Make me sick. Ruin my career. Prove to Morgan that I was unreliable. Maybe even get her to second-guess our marriage. I still didn't tell Morgan. I needed more. I started digging. Diane had prescriptions for Xanax. That part one knew. But what I didn't know was that she'd been getting them from 3 different doctors. Stacking dosages. Crossing legal lines. I checked town gossip forums. I found whispers, her causing scenes at the country club, accusing other women of stealing her jewelry, flipping out on a neighbor's teenage daughter for laughing too loud. I compiled everything. Screenshots, prescriptions, rumors. I wasn't going to the cops, not yet. I wanted leverage. 2 weeks passed. I skipped Sunday dinners. Told Morgan I was preparing for a solo exhibit. She was disappointed but didn't push. I could feel the distance growing between us like a crack in glass, pressure building underneath. And then Morgan said something that stopped me cold. Mom needs headshots for a local women's network profile, she said one evening while we made dinner. She asked if you'd take them. My stomach turned. It was bait. A chance for her to corner me again. I said yes. I showed up that Saturday with my camera bag and a sealed envelope. Diane greeted me at the door in pearls and Chanel. Gerald was at the office. Of course. Before she could say a word, I handed her the envelope. She opened it slowly, then faster, frantic hands trembling over the printed toxicology report, the prescription photos, the whisper threads from neighbors. This is absurd, she whispered. We both know it's not. Her eyes flashed. You're not good enough for my daughter. You never were. And drugging me makes me less so? I wasn't going to hurt you, she snapped. Just incapacitate you. You'd miss your gallery opening. Morgan would see how unreliable you really are. That you don't belong in her future. The cold in her voice? It was deeper than poison. You're going to tell Gerald everything, I said. And from now on you treat me with respect. Not because you've had some change of heart, but because the alternative is Morgan learning everything. She laughed bitterly. She'll never believe you over us. Maybe. But she'll believe the lab report. The neighbors. The prescriptions. You willing to gamble your relationship with your daughter on that? I left without taking a single photo. I didn't expect her next move to be so fast, or so vicious. That night, Morgan sat on the couch, pale and tense. My mom said you threatened her today. What? She said you came over hostile. Scared her. I exhaled slowly. She's lying. Then tell me what happened. So I did. The whole story. I showed her the lab report. The prescription data. Even text messages from Diane that had grown increasingly manipulative, some she'd never seen before. My mom wouldn't do this, Morgan kept repeating. But her voice cracked each time. I didn't push. I just waited. The next day she went to confront them, alone. When she came back, her eyes were rimmed red. My dad says it's all a misunderstanding. That you're just insecure. Jealous. And what do you think? She didn't answer. For the next 2 weeks, Morgan barely looked me in the eye. I threw myself into work. Nights in the studio. Days hiking through fog-soaked ridges just to remember what peace felt like. But that weight, the heaviness of being the villain in someone else's story, it was unbearable. Until the package arrived. No return address. Just my name in elegant script. Inside, a USB drive. And a note. You should see this. The signature? Vanessa. Morgan's sister-in-law. Owen's wife. The quiet one. Always on the edge of family dinners, polite but distant. I plugged in the drive. What I saw changed everything. The footage started in Diane's kitchen. The time stamp matched the night of the birthday dinner. There she was back to me, carefully pouring something from a tiny vial into a glass. The same glass I'd watched Gerald drink from. The camera angle was clear enough to see her hands, the bottle, the motion. Then me walking in. Taking the glasses. Carrying them out. The next clip. The dining room. Gerald drinking. Diane watching him closely. I swallowed hard. But that wasn't the part that gutted me. What came next was... The footage jumped to after we'd left. A heated argument. Diane screaming at Gerald. You weren't supposed to drink that. I thought it was mine, he shouted back. This isn't the first time you've done this, Gerald barked. Wait, what? Not the first time? The video glitched for a second. Then picked up again 2 nights later. Same house. Same room. Diane and Gerald pacing. He knows what you did, Gerald hissed. So what? Diane spat. It's his word against mine. Morgan will never choose him over her own family. And if she does? She's not the daughter I raised, Diane said, her voice venomous. But don't worry, I've already started talking to her about their marriage problems. Planting seeds. By the time I'm done, she'll file for divorce and think it was her idea. I slammed the laptop shut. My hands were shaking. This wasn't about me. It was never just about me. It was about control. They'd done this before. I called Vanessa immediately. Why? I asked. Why send this to me? Her voice cracked. Because they did the same thing to me when I married Owen. I went silent. They never said it outright, but the way they treated me, little digs, backhanded compliments, always whispering to Owen behind my back. It was years of psychological warfare. I thought I was crazy. But I see now, they just want to control everything. Does Owen know? She hesitated. No. He idolizes his dad. Thinks Diane is just eccentric. I tried to tell him once. He said I was paranoid. I nodded slowly. But I saw the way Morgan was starting to look at you, she continued. The doubt. The confusion. I couldn't let them do this to you too. The next morning I got a text from Gerald. We should talk. Man to man. No wives. I met him at his country club, the kind of place with leather chairs, no TVs, and a fireplace that probably cost more than my car. He poured 2 bourbons. Pushed one toward me. Ethan, he said, families are complicated. My wife, she can be dramatic. Protective. But she means well. Drugging someone is not protective, I said flatly. He waved his hand. It was a misunderstanding. Diane's on medication. She probably mixed up the glasses. I have the footage. He froze. What do you want? His voice dropped. Money? That what this is about? I blinked. No. I want you both to stay the hell out of our marriage. He smirked. You think this is the first time we've dealt with someone like you? I leaned forward. What do you mean? Ask Morgan about Thomas, he said casually. The fiancé before you. The room seemed to tilt. She was engaged before me? He nodded. Doctor. Smart. Rich. We didn't like his background. Took us 6 months, but we got her to see the light. She broke it off. Came home crying. He smiled like it was a family triumph. History repeats, son. I left without touching the bourbon. On the drive home, I called Bethany, Morgan's college roommate. Do you remember someone named Thomas? I asked. There was a long pause. Then, oh God. Yeah, that was rough. What happened? Thomas was amazing. Morgan was crazy about him. Then her parents started planting stories. Said he was cheating. Showed her fake messages. By the time he tried to explain, it was too late. The next day I reached out to Thomas. He was cautious at first, but when I told him everything, he sent me email receipts, conversations, photos, proof that Morgan's parents had sabotaged their relationship, like they were orchestrating a smear campaign. I went deeper. I tracked down an old friend from Morgan's high school who mysteriously ghosted her during college. Yeah, she said quietly. Her parents told me to back off. Said I was a bad influence. I didn't want to cause drama. The pattern was unmistakable. Anyone who fostered Morgan's independence was removed. Quietly. Strategically. Vanessa sent me more footage, Diane and Gerald talking about our marriage as if it were a business deal. Once they divorce, Gerald said, she'll move back in. We'll introduce her to someone suitable. I compiled everything. Dozens of files. Labeled, time-stamped, undeniable. And then I made dinner plans. With Owen and Vanessa. Morgan didn't know yet. She was going to find out everything, but not from whispers or guilt trips. She was going to see it. With her own eyes. I invited Owen and Vanessa over under the pretense of a casual dinner. Morgan made her famous red curry, unaware of the storm building in the files on my laptop. As we cleared the dishes, I said, there's something you both need to see. Morgan tilted her head. What's going on? I connected my laptop to the TV. The first clip played, Diane tampering with the sangria. The second, Gerald drinking the glass. I switched. The third, Diane screaming at him afterward, Gerald's voice rising as he shouted, this isn't the first time. Then the video shifted. Footage of Diane and Gerald in their living room, conspiring. Her smug voice echoing, she'll file for divorce and think it was her idea. Owen sat stiffly, his hands clenching. Morgan. She didn't move. Her face was pale, her body frozen. We watched every minute of it. The emails from Thomas. The manipulated texts. Old friends' testimonies. The entire pattern laid bare. By the time the final clip ended, Diane gloating that she'd started planting doubts in Morgan, no one said a word. Until Morgan turned to me, her voice a whisper. Why didn't you tell me sooner? Because it couldn't come from me, I said. You needed to see it. All of it. Not just what they did to me, but what they've been doing to you your entire life. Owen stood up, pacing. This isn't possible. These are edited. My parents wouldn't. Vanessa touched his arm. They did it to us too. What are you talking about? Why do you think they suddenly accepted me after James was born? She said, her voice trembling. Because once we gave them a grandchild, they had leverage. Owen stared at her as if she'd morphed into someone else. You never told me. I tried, Owen. You didn't want to hear it. Later that night, Morgan crawled into bed beside me. She didn't speak, just wrapped her arms around my chest and stayed there for a long time. Finally she said, I believe you. And I'm sorry. The next morning Diane called. Morgan put her on speaker. Darling, Diane cooed. I've been thinking. Why don't you come stay with us for a few days? Clear your head. Marriage is hard, and sometimes a little distance brings clarity. Morgan's voice was firm. I've seen the videos. There was silence on the line. What videos? Diane said, her tone icy. Of you drugging Ethan. Of you and Dad plotting behind our backs. Whatever he's shown you, it's lies, Diane snapped. You know how jealous he's always been of our family. Stop. Morgan's voice cut through like a knife. We're coming over. All of us. No more lies. After she hung up, she turned to me. They'll deny everything. I know. So what's our plan? I smiled for the first time in weeks. It's time your parents met the real me. Not the photographer they mock. The storyteller. The one who knows how to frame the truth. That night, we drove to Diane and Gerald's house. Me, Morgan, Owen, and Vanessa. I brought my camera gear. Gerald greeted us at the door with an unsettling calm. I understand there's been a misunderstanding. No misunderstanding, I said, setting up my tripod. Just a family discussion. And I'm documenting it, for the family archives. Diane paled. This is private, she snapped. Family business. Exactly, I said. And I'm family. Despite all your efforts to erase me. For the next 2 hours I presented the evidence. Each time they denied something I hit play. A clip. An email. A recording. Diane cried. Not from guilt, but from the realization that the manipulation wasn't working anymore. Gerald's silence said more than her tears ever could. Finally Morgan stood. I love you both. You're my parents. But what you've done is unforgivable. You don't get to control my life anymore. Owen nodded. We choose our partners. Our path. Not you. Diane sobbed. We were just trying to protect you. No, Vanessa said quietly. You were trying to possess them. As we left, I handed Gerald a USB drive. This has everything. You can keep it. What's that supposed to mean? He asked. It means I'm not going to destroy your reputation. That would hurt Morgan. And I would never do that. But if you ever interfere again, if you even whisper that I'm not good enough, I'll send copies to every board member at your firm. Your country club. Your investors. Everyone. For the first time I saw it. Not hate. Not disgust. Respect. I underestimated you, Gerald said quietly. Yes, I replied. You did. 6 months passed. 6 months of silence from Diane and Gerald. They didn't apologize. But they didn't interfere either. It was strange, unnerving even. Like the eye of a hurricane. Calm on the surface, but I knew better than to believe the storm was over. Morgan and Owen started therapy, together. Trying to sort through the layers of manipulation their parents had smothered them with since childhood. For the first time they were unpacking years of pain, gaslighting, control disguised as concern. Then came the holidays. A cream-colored envelope arrived at our mailbox. Please join us for Christmas dinner. A fresh start. With love, Diane and Gerald. Morgan hesitated. They're still my parents. I know, I said. Maybe they're trying. Maybe. We went. But we set boundaries. We stayed at a hotel, brought our own car, and there would be no alone time with Diane or Gerald. The dinner itself was picture perfect. Candles, soft jazz, maple-glazed everything. And then Gerald asked to speak with me privately, in his study. Here we go. He poured 2 scotches. Handed me one. I didn't drink. I've been thinking, he began. Photography's been good to you. But have you considered diversifying? I blinked. Come again? I'm offering you a position. Junior partner track. High salary. Private office. Security. My blood simmered. You want me to work for you? You'd be family. Properly integrated. Respected. I set the scotch down, untouched. No. He stiffened. This is an olive branch, Ethan. A way to move forward. It's another power play, I said. You can't buy me, Gerald. And you hate that your daughter loves someone who doesn't care about your approval. His face dropped the act. His voice turned sharp. Don't be a fool. Everyone has a price. I stood. And that's why you'll never understand Morgan. I walked out, back into the dining room where Diane was showing Morgan photo albums. You were so happy when you lived at home, she was saying. Life was simpler. Morgan caught my eye. Saw the look on my face. She stood, cleared her throat. Mom. Dad. I have something to tell you. The room fell silent. I'm pregnant, she said softly. 3 months. Diane gasped, hands to her mouth. Gerald's eyes flicked to mine. I stepped beside Morgan. We're having a daughter. Diane wept, hugged Morgan tight. Gerald extended his hand to me. Congratulations, he said, voice like gravel. I leaned in, lowered my voice. This child will never be a pawn in your games. You try anything, and I will burn what's left of your reputation to the ground. He looked at me like a man who finally understood his kingdom was gone. 3 weeks later, a certified letter arrived from a law firm. Inside, a deed to the house we'd been renting for 2 years, now in Morgan's name. And legal documents for a trust fund for our unborn daughter. No note. No strings. Just silence. It wasn't remorse. Gerald didn't do remorse. It was surrender. He knew he'd lost. But that wasn't the end. Not yet. Because I had one last move to make. Not for revenge. But for legacy. I opened a gallery. Downtown Asheville. Right off Lexington Avenue. My name etched into glass. Boss Studio. Opening night was magic. Friends, clients, strangers. What? Laughter. Storytelling through frames. Morgan held our daughter, Eliza Grace, in her arms, glowing under gallery lights. And then they came. Diane and Gerald. Late. Quiet. No fanfare. Diane held Eliza gently, briefly. Didn't offer advice. Gerald shook my hand. Then he looked at a photo on the wall. A shot of wild horses running through snow. Powerful, he muttered. Frame just right. No suggestions. No passive-aggressive digs. Just acceptance. They left 10 minutes later. That was all I needed. As we locked up that night, Morgan looked at me. Do you think they've changed? I thought for a moment. No. But they know we have. And sometimes that's enough. It had been 6 months since Eliza was born. The quiet between us and Diane and Gerald had grown into something tolerable. Civil, distant. But I never dropped my guard. Because men like Gerald don't just surrender. They retreat and reposition. It happened one Friday afternoon just as I finished setting up a portrait shoot in my gallery. I got a call from Vanessa. She sounded breathless. You need to come to the hospital, she said. What's wrong? It's Owen. He collapsed during a conference. They're running tests. I dropped everything and raced over. When I arrived, Gerald and Diane were already there. Diane sobbing, Gerald pacing. Vanessa holding Owen's hand. Then Morgan arrived with Eliza. We all waited. And waited. Finally, a doctor came out. He's stable, she said. But we need to run some more tests. He's severely dehydrated and had a cardiac event triggered by stress and substance interaction. Substance? Gerald asked. The doctor nodded. We found benzodiazepines in his system. My knees went weak. Morgan gripped my arm. No, that can't be right. The doctor nodded. He shouldn't be on anything like that without a prescription. Does he have one? Everyone turned to look at Diane. She looked like she'd seen a ghost. I don't know how that could have happened. But I did. A memory resurfaced. Owen sipping one of Diane's smoothies at a barbecue last week. Diane offering him tea before his flight. Owen saying he'd felt loopy a few days ago but thought it was exhaustion. She'd never stopped. Only redirected. Morgan stepped back, disgust written across her face. You were drugging him? I was helping, Diane snapped. He's been under pressure. I just wanted him to rest. Vanessa lunged, but I held her back. That's your son, I said through clenched teeth. Your own son. Gerald stepped in. This is insane. You're blowing things out of proportion. I turned on him. You knew she did this to me and you said nothing. Gerald's face twisted. She's my wife. She's a danger. That night, Morgan didn't sleep. Neither did I. By morning, Owen had woken. The doctors confirmed the drug, a mild but steady stream of Xanax laced over days. He had no prescription. He'd been ingesting it unknowingly. And the cameras? Vanessa had installed new home security months ago. She pulled the footage. And there it was, Diane in Owen and Vanessa's kitchen, helping with the groceries, slipping a vial back into her handbag after preparing drinks. When Morgan saw the footage, she didn't cry. She didn't scream. She just sat down, held Eliza close and said one word, enough. That afternoon we filed a police report. The footage, the timeline, the toxicology reports. I gave them the USB drive I'd once handed Gerald, the one he never thought I'd actually use. It was all there. Diane was arrested 3 days later on suspicion of drugging a family member with intent to alter behavior and cause harm. The town's whispers turned into full-blown headlines. Banker's wife accused of drugging son-in-law and son. Investigation underway. Gerald tried damage control. Issued a statement. Claimed Diane was under psychiatric distress. Said the family was handling it privately. But it was too late. Morgan's phone lit up for days, old friends reaching out saying, I always suspected something was off about her. Owen shut down emotionally. Vanessa stepped in as the spokesperson. She didn't hold back. Neither did I. Gerald called me once. I didn't answer. He emailed me. I didn't reply. It was over. Diane's bail hearing came and went. She was released to house arrest, wearing an ankle monitor. The court ordered psychological evaluations. Gerald's firm removed him from the board 2 weeks later. Voluntarily, they said, but everyone knew the truth. They didn't want to be associated with what he'd enabled. And then 1 week later, Morgan found something in an old drawer at her parents' house while helping Owen collect some of his things. It was a folder. Inside, photos. Old ones. From before I met her. Of Thomas. Her ex. With scribbled notes in Diane's handwriting. Untrustworthy. Inappropriate sense of humor. Too soft-spoken. Clipped beneath them? A private investigator's report. Clearly doctored. Fake evidence. Diane had fabricated an affair. Planted it. Fed it to Morgan until she believed it. Morgan collapsed in my arms sobbing. They broke me, she whispered. They took someone I loved, and destroyed it. I never even got closure. But now she had it. And now I had what I needed for the final move. Diane never went to prison. She was found unfit to stand trial. Psychological instability, a web of prescriptions and powerful attorneys ensured that. But she lost everything that mattered to her. Her reputation. Her community. Her grip on her children. And her illusion of control. Gerald resigned from every board he sat on. He sold off property quietly, distanced himself from Diane publicly. But the damage had already rippled through the world he valued most, his name. They moved to a smaller place, which was still massive but missing one thing, family. Morgan never brought Eliza over again. Not once. The only photos they got of our daughter were the ones I published online. Part of my gallery's new series on fatherhood and wild truth. I called it Unfiltered. It sold out. A year passed. Morgan and I stood on the porch of our new home, our own, not something leased, not something gifted. A home we built with earnings, effort, and peace. Eliza was teething, drooling on my shoulder. Morgan snapped a photo with her phone and smiled. Still think revenge has to be loud? She asked. No, I said. I think the loudest revenge is silence, followed by success. Later that month I received a package in the mail. No note. No signature. Inside was an old leather-bound photo album. The first few pages were empty. Then photos appeared. From years ago. Photos of Morgan, dressed up for her engagement to Thomas. Candids. One page had a sticky note. I'm sorry you never got to know the truth. I did what I was told. B. Bethany. Her college roommate. Another page contained a photo of Diane younger at a psychiatrist's office. A copied record underneath. Subject exhibits controlling behaviors tied to unresolved grief. It didn't excuse her, but it gave the story a kind of final page. I closed the album and locked it in my studio drawer. Then I printed one of the photos I'd taken of Morgan holding Eliza at the gallery opening. I framed it, put it on the wall. The title? Freedom. That night I drafted a letter. I didn't send it, but I wrote it anyway. Dear Gerald and Diane. I used to think the worst thing you could do was destroy someone. But now I know, the worst thing you did wasn't trying to break me. It was convincing your own daughter she didn't have the right to choose her own life. You didn't just fail her. You warped her. And she still grew stronger than anything you could twist. She is the mother of my child. The love of my life. And she is done with your ghosts. I won't hurt you. I won't expose you further. Because the story has already been told. And the frame never lies. Ethan. That winter, I gave a talk at an arts university. I told the story, not with names, not with shame, but with purpose. How truth can be manipulated. How stories can be rewritten. But the lens, the honest lens, captures what people try to hide. A girl in the front row raised her hand. What do you think is the most powerful kind of revenge? I smiled. Living well. On your terms. With no more lies. In the end, truth has a way of surfacing, even if it comes twisted through pain and betrayal. As one wise voice once said, sometimes your greatest enemy was once your closest ally. If this story struck a chord with you, let us know in the comments. And don't forget to subscribe, share, and spread the word, because justice deserves to be heard.